What's up, everybody? So I wanted to make this video mainly because I've been kind of thinking about it for a good while now, and the topic of today is going to be my personal thoughts on remakes and remasters. Now, I've grown up with video games all my life pretty much. My first console was the N64, and from then on, I just fell in love with video games, and I've been playing them ever since. So, the main reason why I don't really like remakes and remasters, at least now, is I wrote down a little list. I made about 4 points that really stood out to me. Point number one: much of the original content from the game that they're remaking or remastering has been removed. Biggest example of this that I can give is the Metal Gear Solid HD collection, Volume 1, I believe, which has Metal Gear Solid 3. And they removed Snake versus Monkey, and they also removed Solid Skate from the games, which is really, I feel like it's really unnecessary, for one. And number two, a lot of people are not even going to be able to get an opportunity to play these games, to play these mini games, which I think really sucks because it also adds another layer of, awesomeness and coolness to the game itself, which Metal Gear Solid 3 already is a really awesome game, and there's so many things in there that you can do, so many secrets, so many hidden things, and so on and so forth. So for them to completely remove those mini games and that kind of content from the HD remake makes absolutely no sense to me, because you'd figure that if they're going to be improving on the original game by upping the graphics, which you don't even get HD graphics in that game to begin with. You play on a 4.3 aspect ratio and you can't even crank it up to 4K or HD or whatever, so it's completely stupid in my opinion. I don't understand why they decided to go that route with many games. Like I said, Metal Gear Solid 3 is just an example of this. It really sucks, and it's also a reason why I encourage people to just go out, buy a PS2 and buy those games. Why? Because I managed to buy Metal Gear Solid 3 in perfect condition for as little as $10. And I just went to a retro game shop and I was just looking around. I was trying to look for the Fatal Frame series, which is really hard to come across, but man, I really hope that I manage to get my hands on it sometime, because I really want to play that series. I only ever really managed to play it on emulator, but the emulator that I was using at the time, which I believe was PCSX2, it was really buggy and laggy, and it just didn't do much. It lagged on certain levels, and it basically just froze to the point where it wasn't playable for me. And I tried fixing the issues, and it didn't really do much of anything, so I just said, you know what, that's that. I'll eventually end up getting the games on the actual hardware. And that's another thing that I want to talk about too, is game preservation, but that's going to be a different video altogether. My second point: a lot of the characters from the remakes end up losing their charm. Biggest example of this is Resident Evil 4, the new one. Leon, Luis, and even Jill from Resident Evil 3. The new one, not the old one. Now, I understand why they decided to change Leon. They wanted to go with the more serious kind of tone, this and that or whatever. But to me, it just, to me, it doesn't really feel like Leon all that much anymore. And you know, people can argue and say, oh, well, you're just not a fan of the remakes or whatever. And it's true. That's why I have a lot of points to support this opinion of mine. But a lot of characters, I feel like, you know, they change them for the worst. Another good example of this is Ada from Resident Evil 4, the remake. They just completely took everything that made her awesome and they just completely screwed her over, not only with the voice, but just, I feel like with everything else, a lot of other things. They completely fucked up the character. I don't really like Leon all that much, to be honest. I think he's kind of, I think he's alright, you know. I think he's okay. I like the old Leon better because the old Leon, I feel like he had more like charisma. He was more funnier. You know, he could be very serious at times, but he was always, you know, willing to crack a joke here and there. And the new one just kind of falls flat, to be honest. Luis, I could say the same. I sort of understand the route that they were going with for the remake, but I like the old Luis better. The new one just feels, I don't know, these characters just feel so bland and they just feel like they don't even feel like the characters that they're supposed to be anymore, to be honest. Point number 3. This goes back to my first point, talking about the cut content. And that is that a lot of the content that gets cut from the remakes usually ends up being sold as DLC, as a way to incentivize consumers and players to put in more money than what they've already spent. I do not like that at all. I think it's really shitty, it's really scummy, and overall just very, very stupid. The reason I say is because, you know, all this content, going back to Metal Gear Solid 3 again, Solid Skate, Snake versus Monkey, and, you know, I believe even the VR missions in Substance. I know for a fact that most of the reason that they end up removing the original content or those additional pieces of content is because later on down the line they're going to add them as DLC. And I think it's really stupid the fact that people already have to pay around 60 or 70 bucks, however much they're selling these remakes for. And I could be wrong, you know, maybe they're selling them for as low as 35 bucks or something. I don't really know. I don't check. I don't really care. But the fact that you guys have to go out and put in, you know, an absurd amount of money and then later on down the line have to put even more money to unlock stuff that is already in the game, that was already supposed to be in the game, only for them to cut it out and put it back in and kind of like, you know, dangle it above your head and be like, oh, look, guys, look at this new stuff you guys can get. I think it's really shitty. I think it's absolutely scummy. And it's just fucking terrible. It's another reason why I incentivize people to go out and just get the originals, you know? Because at least there you have the complete game, right? No DLC, no bullshit like that. Everything that you could want, you can unlock there. You know, all the mini games are there. You can fully immerse yourself without having to think or worry about you missing some form of content that was cut because of stupid reasons. And my fourth point to all of this, and my personal opinion as to why I don't like HD remakes and remasters anymore, is because they just feel so lackluster. Now, like I said, it could probably just be me, or there might be a handful of people that feel the same way. But when you compare the originals to the remakes, yes, I understand that they bumped up the graphics, that everything looks so much better and so it looks so much more realistic. But let's be honest here. Are we going, like, why do people care so much about realism in video games? I understand if it's a game like Ready or Not, or that one SWAT game, or games that do have to have some form of realism, like for instance Red Dead 2. That I completely understand. That I totally get. But I mean, aren't video games supposed to be based off of like fantasy and things that aren't even tied to realism? So the whole argument of, oh, it's just, oh, it's better graphics, which means the game is going to be better. Well, not necessarily. Better graphics don't necessarily mean better gameplay or better storytelling or better illustration. You could have a game with the most amazing graphics, the most highly detailed graphics that you could ever want. And if the storyline is bullshit, if the gameplay sucks, if the music sucks, all these components make for an awesome game. So if you're just solely focusing on one specific thing, which is graphics, then why not just go out and buy yourself a HDMI converter if that's really what you're going for? I mean, that's really it. That's really my personal thoughts and opinions on this once again. But if you guys really want to go out of your way to play these games on with much better graphical settings, then I'd say don't restrict yourself to having to play on 4.3 aspect ratio when you could just buy yourself a converter for really cheap and crank that shit up to whatever settings you want, 1080p, 720p, whatever the fuck. Like, we should really stop giving our money to these companies, because I'm not only am I seeing this in video games, but I'm also seeing this in like movies and other forms of media too, right? The biggest thing that I could give out as an example is the whole Willy Wonka movie. Like, didn't we already have Charlie in the Chocolate Factory? Didn't we already have Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory? And now they're doing a remake of it? Just sounds to me like they're losing ideas at this point. Because if this is the route that they're going to go, where they're like, let's take a look back and see which games were really popular back then, and up the graphics a little bit, and cut off a bunch of content that we don't feel like it should be necessary, even though it's part of the experience, part of the game, and end up selling those pieces of content that we cut later on as DLC. A lot of people will end up falling for it. And if it's the whole nostalgia thing that you're going for, like I said, just go out and buy the actual like hardware and game for it. You'll have a much better experience. You won't have to rely on like patches and DLC and having to connect yourself to the internet to access certain features. You can have everything right then and there. You don't have to waste a bunch of money to get the kind of experience that you want to get. Anyway, that's my whole ramble. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It's something a little new that I'm trying out. Haven't really given much thought or script onto this. So yeah, I mean, if you guys enjoyed it, drop a like. If you didn't, drop a dislike and leave a comment down below. Take care.